I think the pile of books makes it look kind of like it's lived in. Do you know, like, do you ever see Michael D. Higgins' office?
Oh yeah.
It's just a pile of books and papers and everything because he's always constantly reading things and just. So yeah, I don't think it signals anything.
Yeah.
Other
You're
than
right.
a
Other than me
curiosity.
being the future president of Ireland.
You know what? There could be worse people that would run for it.
Yeah, Conor McGregor for one.
Jesus Christ! I mean, how did that even become a topic?
Well, because he took a little trip to the White House, didn't he? And then Trump and Elon got in his ear. Yeah, and then he came back from there full of
one narcissist
notions.
helping another, and like literally, like every person around him was like, "Not a
absolutely
chance.
not."
No. Like, God, did they not research like people that they should bring to the White House for like good perception purposes? I don't know, but
well, no, of course not, because
yeah, okay, yeah, I know. Why am I even questioning it? But look, anyway, welcome back to A Word With Yourself.
Welcome
We've
back.
been gone. Just
a Diet Coke in a teacup.
I was going to say that looks like coffee, and that wouldn't be like you to drink a cup of coffee.
Wouldn't be like me to be drinking coffee.
No, and I was like, well, your tea is very, very strong.
Thought I'd put my Diet Coke in a teacup and look fancy.
You know, there's no law against it. Why not? Oh, sometimes I put my Diet Coke in a wine glass when I have nothing else to drink it out of, and I'm like, ooh.
Or like a whiskey glass, you know, like a crystal tumbler.
Nice.
Yeah.
That reminds me, actually, I need to go to Loblaws and claim my stamps that I was collecting to get 2 whiskey glasses. So I'm going to do that later. Yeah. So I'm flying through the stamps. I already have 2 sets of the same glasses that I was like, okay, I'm just going to like have a new little collection here. But I have no space left to put any more glasses. But
pick your 2 least favorite glasses and throw them out.
Get rid of them.
Yeah.
God, donate them somewhere. Everything I have, like, you know, I might need this in the future, even though it's a broken glass that's been in my cupboard for a year. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do later on.
We learn to let go.
Yeah, I know. I find there's not as much places to bring your stuff in Canada as there is, like, at home. I bring it to a charity shop.
Drop it off charity shop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can do that, like, all right. But I think in the city there's less options for it. There'd be more options now around here.
Yeah. Okay.
To do that.
I should save some stuff up and bring it out to yours the next time I go visit you.
Go drop it off. We'll go find a thrift store.
Yeah. Nice little thrift store.
A little thrift store.
Yeah.
You can drop stuff off with. I don't know about glassware now, how that works, but yeah.
I don't know. I think now you're leaning over to one side, so if we want to get it, there you go.
Look,
not that everybody can see us, but yeah, I know. Sometimes you have a lean.
So I just want to be comfortable.
I know.
I forget. I'm desperate for fidgeting in the chair, you know.
I know. I would.
I take myself on a journey.
Oh, sometimes when I'm trying to find a picture of you for the cover, like I have to zoom through and try and find a spot where you're not like over in the corner.
I should like try and like fucking lock myself in.
Yeah. All right, here we go. And anyone who's listening can't see, but it's fine. Maybe they'll watch and listen. Who knows?
Maybe.
I know everyone's been desperate for us to be back on the podcast to share our thoughts about everything. So here we are. So what do you want to talk about?
What do we want to talk about? We've been talking about AI. You know?
Shockingly. Yeah.
It's like nobody's talking about it. And we just thought, you know what people need is a conversation about AI.
Yeah.
Because there's just an absolute desert out there where people talk.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what are those things called that roll in the desert, or
it's like a dust
tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed.
There we go. Yeah.
That's it.
But anyway, specifically though, we were going to talk. I've seen it a lot actually. Not a whole lot, but I've seen a couple of things on the effect on entry level jobs. And how it's going to reduce them, maybe, possibly, you know.
Definitely.
It will, because even stuff that I'm thinking to myself, like that I would ask, say, like a coordinator to do, like, you know, draft a plan and then I can review it. You know, that kind of takes that one job away, and that's just one particular thing that I'm talking about, like a content plan or a marketing plan, or read this document and pick out the key pieces for me, and then I can look at them. You know, so it's a lot of things like that. That you might not even realize that junior people do, and that's how they learn, you know, by reading those things and absorbing the information as well.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. So definitely. And also it's already happening. I think it's not like when, it's like it's already happening right now. Because the thing is, like, so the pros that are extolled, for AI is that it will get rid of a lot of what you might call like the grunt work and the busy work, and like, free you up to do more like creative thinking and like focus on, challenging problems. And that's true. It's just that, like, in the same vein, like the downside to that is, your entry level positions and your intern positions, like what's their starting point, right? If AI starts chipping away at like those like entry level positions, then how do you enter
start?
a workplace? Like where do you learn that? So like that gap between like leaving, wherever, you've come out of, be it like straight from school, college, university, or like some sort of certification or whatever that is, into the workplace, if they used to butt up like this, but now there's like this gap of knowledge, like how do we fill that gap in it? Because most of it happens like, so when we think of like entry level and stuff, like sometimes we think instinctively of like training programs, right? Like, or, official like mentorship, or, someone who is specifically there to teach you things, right? And yes, that does happen, but like I think that happens a lot less than people think, right? Or those sort of programs are not necessarily as good as people think. Most of that kind of learning just happens like on the job, right? Sometimes through trial and error, to your point, like, but sometimes just through observation, right? So if you're brought in as like, doing, we'll say, admin in a company, like entry level, you may not have a lot of like accountability and responsibility of like, creating certain things, but everything passes in front of your eyeballs, right? And so like you observe how people behave with each other. You observe how, like, if your job is like taking notes and doing an agenda for a meeting, for example, like that work itself doesn't seem incredibly difficult, although it can be. So like people need to, maybe value that more. But it's also that opportunity to observe that meeting that's happening, and like how decisions are made, how people conduct themselves, the kind of ideas that are brought up. You're able to like view like different levels of the company, so it like a lot of it just happens through this like observation. And the thing is now we have tools to take notes in meetings and produce the summaries of it, produce action items, create agendas, like do research, like all of those kind of things. So how do you learn?
Bridge that?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like a big thing that's going to come up. And it also is very in the tech world as well, like development specifically, a lot of the entry level like coding positions, right? They're all being AI'd away. So we've always talked about like, yes, AI is great as a tool to be used, but you have to have the expertise to assess whether its output is good and valuable and true and accurate and all of that kind of stuff, and be able to take its output like on at kind of face value, but like critically look at it and make any tweaks and edits and stuff and changes, because you're the person with the expertise to do that in. But like, how do you get that expertise, right, if you don't get to go through the years of like learning those lessons and those things
and observing? That's actually a good point, because I was thinking I use AI to track some meetings and record them and do the transcript and then summarize them, etc. But as you said, I have to then review what it puts out, and it's not always accurate. So it takes me maybe like another 15 minutes to read through it and edit it and make sure like the names of people who were mentioned are right and things like that. So there is that admin process. But how do you learn that in the first place? How to better structure it, or that doesn't sound quite right. So it is that gap of how to fix it, or how to kind of get to that level of knowledge that you're able to quickly go in and observe and fix everything up before you send it out to like a group of executives or something like that.
Yeah. And like the thing is, like, I realized, I mean, you look at this and like you understand that this is going to become a problem, but I realized what a stark problem it is that when I was trying to explain how to use some of these like models like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., I was trying to explain it to people who wouldn't naturally be in that tech space, right? And they've heard of AI and they're kind of afraid to use it and so on. And so I was explaining it to someone, and so like when you're doing that, obviously you're tailoring your explanation to your audience, right? And so I was trying to explain it in like the least technical way possible, like absolute layman's terms. And the best way I could come up with that resonated the most was, you need to treat it like it's an intern.
Yeah. And like that's what we do with that.
And that's what we do, right? And so, and then, when you say that, I like, it's like, okay, but if this is our intern, right, or that entry level position, the graduate, like, etc., where do our interns go?
Yeah.
Right? Where do the entry level positions go? Where do the graduates go? Like beyond the job training just becomes so much more difficult when a lot of these, like what would be considered to be entry level tasks. Yes, it's kind of great that they can be done by AI, but it's the lessons that you learn from it are not necessarily in doing those specific tasks.
Yeah.
It's the context within which you're doing those tasks. So it's not that you're learning a huge amount from like knowing how to answer a phone. Right? It's the context within. Like if you're working as a receptionist at a corporate like company, for example, like answering the phone isn't necessarily the difficult thing to do. It's like it's talking to all the different people, it's understanding like what everybody's doing, it's being able to communicate to like executives around you, it's being able to like coordinate people, and it's listening and observing all of these different things that are happening around you the whole time. It's the context that's really education and not necessarily the task itself. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's what they say, like executive assistants to like executives know so much, and they can, you know, even I think is it Michael O'Leary used to be an executive assistant or something to another Irish billionaire or whatever, and he just picked up so much knowledge that you know he was able to then, you know, move his career into a more leadership type of level, because he just knows so much about what's going on at the organization. And that's just an executive assistant, but like admins, all that type of stuff, know the kind of nitty gritty of what's going on. So I'm not even sure a way to bridge it. I mean, I'm sure there's still the capacity for roles that are internships but integrate. They have to figure out how to integrate the AI aspect into that, you know, and not just focus on those traditional things that interns would be doing. Like, how do you adapt using AI to still have interns and still give people that opportunity to learn?
And I think fundamentally it just means that there'll be some like fewer positions, right? Like, so the number of these kind of positions out there is just going to drop drastically. And I think it affects the workforce generally. Like we already talk about how it's, you know, the new industrial revolution in terms of how it's going to affect the workforce generally and how it's going to affect job availability and which jobs are going to start being valued more highly. But that's kind of the bigger view, but like the slice of that is that particularly in those like entry level positions, like I think that's gonna shrink so much, and probably is already shrinking so much. Like there was a company, and I can't remember their name now because I feel like I need to know who their name was, but there was a company who basically put out a policy that said you need to prove specifically that AI cannot do a job before you're allowed to hire for it. So it was a new company policy. It says we are doing no more hiring until you can prove specifically that AI cannot do the job that you want to hire for. Yeah. And only then that you've proved and we've agreed that AI cannot do it, then you'll be allowed to hire for that person. So like it's already in action. Now, I think I came across that story and I cannot remember who it is. It's really annoying me. But I think I came across it because they actually decided to roll that policy back a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's like, the thing is AI can do a lot, but it has to be managed. Like you cannot have AI without a human in the loop.
Yeah.
I think right now it's just whatever that's going to look like in the future. Right now, it's just the capability isn't there. AI hallucinates, it creates issues. It's a reflection of us, right? And so
it's not just a one and done. We put AI in, don't need anyone else to do anything.
No, exactly. And so the human in the loop is necessary, but the human in the loop normally needs to be an expert. Yeah. And how in the future, what is that track to that expertise anymore? Like, you know, if you don't have it.
Do the experts then have to say they have to do summaries, or they, you know, if they're cutting out the kind of the more junior employees that manage all that stuff, you know, who is putting the transcript into AI or doing that and reviewing it? You know, you don't necessarily want your senior people to be doing that type of stuff. So where is this cutoff, you know, for you're managing the AI to track meeting notes, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the mid-level positions will be managing the AI, you know, and I think the work kind of at the more senior level doesn't really fundamentally change, right? Yeah. Because, you know, I would still either receive drafts of stuff that I would review and edit and then approve, right? And so however that gets to that point, be it through an AI tool or through the company, right? You know, whatever that looks like, that for me, it fundamentally stays the same. I think the more junior the position is the more likely to you'd be affected by either the job disappearing or your job now suddenly including managing an AI tool as opposed to managing people
person,
doing it. Yeah.
That might actually suit some people better.
You know
To not
what?
have to be a people manager.
It actually might.
They can be passive aggressive and rude to the AI.
Yeah.
Not
We now have
junior.
we talked about like either a manager and IC. Now we have a third option, which
Yes.
is an AI manager.
Yeah. Oh my
You
God.
know,
That's actually
honestly,
true.
maybe
That could be a way to get around it. Yeah.
yeah. You know, I'm gonna pocket that one and think
How well
about
have you
it.
managed your AI this year? I don't know.
Yeah, because the thing is, you've got to train it, right? So when you think about it, like
you have to give it the right prompts. It's exactly like training, like a person. Like you have to give it the right information, or they're not going to give a good output.
Specific instructions, etc.
Yeah,
and it might actually be a good way to train managers because you can kind of cut your teeth on your ability to use clear communication, like exact delegation to an AI tool without encountering
really
a HR issue because you're bad at it in the beginning.
It's not going to complain about you.
To like practice
who knows what's going to happen.
To get good at it before you're allowed to do that with people, right?
Oh my God, that's a great idea for us. Training, pre-training, pre-people manager training via AI.
Let's put it in our tool belt.
Yeah, one more thing to add there.
Yeah. So I think that's and the thing is, like, the efficiency is there, and this is why the business case for it is so strong. It's not really going to go anywhere. The business case is there because you could be a manager of an AI tool, and the output that single AI tool and the amount of work you put into managing it, the output is so much bigger.
Yeah.
Then because like they do say that like you can't really effectively manage more than 7 individuals. It can be a little bit more if you have a bunch of people doing the exact same thing, right? Because then the work instructions are the same. But like at above 7 people, then like the amount of time that you have to be able to like coach and manage performance and all that kind of stuff, right? It's just too much.
Freed up.
And so that's why the pyramid is often very common, is because outside of that, your management efficacy goes down. So
you'd be stretched far too thin.
But if you're a manager managing an AI tool, you could probably you're managing effectively what would be the output of maybe 100 people.
Wow.
Well, very much less effort, right? Because you're just training a model.
Yeah.
Like you're training a tool or creating a GPT or whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying about, the Industrial Revolution and things like that, things are kind of, we talked about this before. I've seen a lot on TikTok that people are talking about going back into the trades because they're seeing that these are the type of skills that, they've lasted throughout history pretty much. Anything that's ever happened, like plumbers, carpenters, other trades like that are, people require somebody to be there in person to fix their sink, so these skills are always, nobody's come up with an AI that can fix your sink, and so it's these reliable jobs that has kind of a longevity that now people are like, actually that might be a better or safer option for me to go into as a career versus a corporate office job that may have some impact from AI.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see the younger generation kind of coming full circle back around to wanting to do trades and it being kind of a cool thing to do now.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I think it's great. And then because there's just always going to be things that people need to do. And the things that people need to do are going to, those kind of positions are just going to be valued so much highly. I think we'll see a flip on things like, standard wages and all of that stuff will, I think, flip out of white collar and back to blue collar. Whereas the blue collar job, like traditionally blue collar, and I really hate those terms, but like they'll be deemed much higher value and I think higher paid as well. I think that's how it's going to start flipping around.
Yeah. God, I wish I'd become a plumber.
You still can.
I know that. Yeah, we've talked about this. I know your brother did it, and something. Yeah. I just finished an MBA. I might as well have done a college internship or a trades internship for 2 years, and I probably have more options. But anyway, one more thing I wanted to ask you before we go was: have you seen all? I've been sending you these, like all the return to office mandates that have been like popping up in the last week or so, and they literally all say the same thing. Like it's mad. They're just copying each other's statements, being like, to effectively execute our strategy, it requires like collaboration and people, and they're just basically, some of them are going from 3 days to 4 days. Like, what is it? Just a power trip?
Day good. Yeah, I think it is.
It is just to say, and the interesting thing is, like, a lot of them are big companies, and they seem to be now leveraging the fact that it's a more secure job than a smaller company. And, like people are less likely to, just up and quit because, they've got their benefits, their pensions, like the pay is better. So the big banks and things like that have greater capacity to kind of force people to do that. Whereas, smaller companies can offer remote work and hybrid work as some kind of advantage when they're hiring people. So it is a good for both sides, I guess. But, the bigger companies are more able to force people to do it because, some people are locked in for 10, 15 years and the job market's not great. So they're kind of capitalizing on the fact that people have no other option. And it's kind of scary. And yeah, I've just seen so much of it lately. And, we talk about this all the time. But just really in the last few weeks, I've seen so much more of it, which is terrifying.
Yeah, I think what I find interesting about it is that, like, historically, we have seen that when the balance of power shifts towards the more powerful, right? So, like, particularly in the job market, when it shifts towards being, in the hands of the employers, right? Because we're seeing this massive shift in the job market. As in general, because obviously there's some companies doing great work. In general, those companies will always go bad. Like they just, people. This is now a full side quest, right? But but like sometimes these days you hear a lot of people being against unions, right? And stuff. And it's always baffled me because it's like, you don't understand, like without unions, you wouldn't have had like weekends. You wouldn't have been able to like finish your day at 5. You wouldn't have had minimum wage. You like, there's so many like vacation time, parental leave, everything like these, like, this is how you got it. Like companies have to be legislated. Like they have to be given laws to treat you right, because if they will take any opportunity to not treat you right if they can. And that's like proven in this. It's like they were all fully like, oh yeah, like we'll all be remote and we can all work better like this, which was entirely proven that you can, as good if not better. And when people were desperate for people to work, right? And now that it's switched the other way, the company's like, oh, we don't have to care about that anymore because we have plenty of people applying for jobs. We're not going to be short of people. We'll do what we want, right? And like it just, I'm never surprised by it, but it's always like, listen, like watch them, like watch their actions. They only care about you if they are legally obliged to, and or like are afraid for some reason, either afraid because like people are like leaving and they've got loads of other jobs to go to, like whatever the reason it is. That's the only time they really get pushed to do something good. And right also now, work the balance
of power is
entirely exactly. Which is why I'm super excited about the other company I'm working with, because like it's very much like no, we want to create a company that's actually genuinely good for employees as much as anything else, and long may it last.
That's something that would be not normal, but it's not.
Yeah, and I think like it's always to companies' detriment that they don't consider like how
100%.
How people like really affect the value of companies and how they can contribute to companies even in a way they don't understand. And actually, I've got a great story about this. It ties into that about companies kind of like not realizing where people are so important in like a process, but it also ties into the fact that like a cautionary tale. So, me, I'm in operations, so I love automation and efficiency and all of that, and that's all great. But I also think that it has to be done like thoughtfully and where it's appropriate, but that where people are necessary, you need to keep that human in the loop. There was this is a cautionary tale about kind of doing full automation without considering all of those things. There was a sausage factory in Chicago. They used to make Vienna sausages, and they were in like I don't know how long the company's been going, for decades and decades, but they were in like an old kind of like facility in the city. And they were going to move to like a bigger like facility to like, help with production and just like all around be better. And so they built this beautiful new facility and moved there. And then for some reason, their Vienna sausages coming out of that factory, the color was different and it tasted different. And they couldn't figure out why. And they spent 18 months, no joke, trying to find out why the sausages were different. The ingredients were exactly the same. The formula of the recipe, exactly the same. Temperature stuff was cooked on, exactly the same. Time that stuff was like mixed, exactly the same. Like the supply chain of like where the ingredients were coming from, like all of that, exactly the same. They could not figure out why all of a sudden they moved to this facility and the sausages just don't taste as good. Apparently they didn't have like the right snap and like the color was off. Like they just couldn't figure it out. And then at some point, some social event, they were like yapping about, let's call him Jim. I don't know, I can't remember what his name was, from the old factory. And everybody started telling stories about Jim because everybody knew Jim. Jim's job in the old factory was to walk the sausages from where they were being mixed to where they were to be cooked. And he didn't move to the new factory because it was the other side of the city and he didn't want to commute and whatever. And so like the old factory was inefficient. And so it used to take something like 20 minutes an hour to like walk the racks of sausages from where it was like mixed and put in the thing to where it was going to be cooked. And so what they figured out was that in that 20 to 30 minute walk, he was walking, because it was such a convoluted route, like he was walking like past some other ovens, like, or in like, and the differences in temperature and like humidity conditions that happened in that 20 to 30 minute walk cooled and slightly cured the sausages to a point that when they got cooked, they were this like, and so in the new one, because they had made the whole like, you know,
process more efficient,
assembly line more efficient, they actually missed that like, what ended up being super important 20 to 30 minutes that the sausages needed in specific conditions to turn into what everybody knew and loved. And they had to build a whole new addition to the factory to mimic the conditions of what that walk did for those sausages. Yeah, because he used to walk through and he'd like stop and yap to the people at the oven here, you know, and then he'd walk and he'd stop and blah, 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 blah. And that actually made the sausages better. And they only figured it out like now almost 2 years after they moved to the new
They didn't
factory.
document that process very well, did they?
Like, well, yeah, because they just didn't even consider it. Like it wasn't considered to be part of it. They got everything else, you know, as you would think, to document it, but like
but not
just the importance of
and the walk.
Yeah, or just the walk and the walk and the chat and the conditions that he had to walk through had changed it enough. And then once they did that and they had to like completely mimic those conditions, and then lo and behold, went back.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is a really good example.
That was a great story. I love that story. I think it's a great story. But I just think it's such a good cautionary tale, you know.
Like efficiency isn't always going to come out with the same product, you know. It depends on other factors that you may not.
And also about like not jumping the gun, right? So we have tons of automation AI tools now and they can do fantastic things. But like don't just jump to implementing them. Like you have to understand fully what is actually happening in the first place and where value is being given, and then figure out how to plug in stuff if you want to create like efficiencies or automations, right? And sometimes there's some things that you just want to leave well enough alone if it's creating enough value and you don't think you can replicate it through automation.
That's a good point. Actually, not everything needs. Because right now it's like AI, but like sometimes things don't need it, and figuring that out is almost is valuable too. So that's good. I'm gonna look that up later. I want to see more about Jim and his sausage.
I don't think his name was Jim, but I'm nearly 100% sure it was Vienna Sausage Factory in Chicago. So I think that much is definitely.
I'm sure I can whittle it down.
Yeah,
I can find anything. If you give me one word, I will be able to find it. So don't worry.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I have to go back to work. So a short and sweet session, but we'll do a longer one next week.
Yeah. It was nice.
Stuff.
Little snippet.
Yeah. Cool. All right. See everybody next week. All our audience.
We'll be back by unpopular demand.
Exactly. All right. Bye.
Bye.